Okay, so this is my devotional picture to Celtic art. This is where everything I'd been learning about Celtic art was, and the Celtic culture was brought together into one place, which I really felt had not been done before, or at least I'd not seen it done before, and I really wanted to bring everything together so that other people who wanted to learn about Celtic art could really look in this one place and find everything that they would like to know in a general way about the Celtic people and Celtic art. So what inspired me to do this painting was that the Celtic people and the Celtic world is very much a mysterious place. We've got many facets and it's not really known about, and I believe that in order to understand who we are, it's quite important to look back in time, not just to the recent history, but as far back as you can go, and to draw upon the energies of our ancient ancestors to find some kind of living connection to allow us to understand ourselves through this living chain. So the Celtic World picture actually took 1.5 years to pencil, pen, and then finally paint. And so it was very much a labour of love, and that was a lot of effort for a long time to create this picture. So the chalice on the left represents the Holy Grail. Now, the Holy Grail is an aspect of the Celtic world that was introduced in the time of the Arthurian era, which very much holds a very special place in the whole Celtic mythology because it's the nearest we've got to the last living legend of the Celtic peoples, just on the threshold where it seems the modern era has come. But at the heart of the Arthurian, Merlin, Guinevere's story is Celtic principles. So there's a sort of a magical element, and the Holy Grail is really seeking something that is transcendental and immortal about our experience on Earth, and it's there like a dangling carrot for all people to sort of seek, and I believe it's valid today, which is why it's included in the picture. You may be wondering what is written on the chalice, and it is a poem, and it's written in runes. Now, if you would like to translate the runes, I would suggest tracking down a copy of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit, because on the very front page of The Hobbit, and once you open it up, is a set of runes, and there is a way of translating these runes into English by realizing that they represent, Tolkien gives the clues away in the first few pages of what the translation is. So you can do this for yourself, and then once you've got that code, you can go back to the chalice and translate the poem for yourself. You can see in the top right-hand corner a map of the British Isles. Now, it's been rotated on its side to give the impression of what it was like from the very olden days, if you're in Europe, and how you might have envisaged the British Isles from the European point of view. But also you'll see dots on this map, and they represent the stone circles. Now, this is a pretty accurate map today, and you can see how in the traditional Celtic areas of Cornwall and Wales and Scotland and Ireland, the density of dots is still there's quite a few there, but in the more easily invaded areas, there's not very many at all. And this is because as these places are so much more invaded and different civilizations have come and conquered them, they've basically been eroded over time and been used for buildings or broken up for whatever purposes. But legend has it that what you're seeing there on that map is meant to be just 10% of the stone circles that once were on the British Isles. Okay, so right in the center of the picture is 3 circles, one on top of the other. And the middle circle represents this world, which is the material world that we live in on our day-to-day life. The other world is the world above us, the world of the sky, roughly occupied by where birds are, the higher realm, as you were, but also beyond that, the clouds, and then the sun, the constellation, the stars, things that you can't reach easily with your body. And then at the lowest circle represents the underworld. Now this world is where the roots are, the things that are invisible down in the caves, the mystery of the earth itself, where we're standing, what are we standing on, how deep is it, and this nourishment that the earth gives us, the magnetism of our bodies to be pulled down to it. It also represents the ancestral past as well. This is represented in this picture with the 30 stones of Stonehenge in the lowest circle. Okay, so the sword for me represented the idea of a central axis. Now this is a principle within us that we can develop. A dormant energy which you yourself can undergo the transformation of in yourself. It's like a sort of inner alchemy, if you like, but you can see that when things have a rotation, they create a magnetism and a life to them. And for instance, something like the Earth is rotating, and obviously you can see there's life on Earth, but the Moon is actually doesn't actually rotate on its own axis and is apparently barren. So there's a speculation there that if something starts rotating in its own right, then it creates its own gravity. And this is a fundamental principle of life itself. So there's a couple of panels on the left-hand side. The top panel is a beginner's guide of how to do the various styles of Celtic art, from the knots, the key patterns and the spirals, developing from very simple principles of dots and diamonds all the way through with how they're formed and a few of their variations in a very concise amount of space. But you really can learn all of the basic forms of Celtic art from that one little panel. Now below this you will see the secret language of the Druid, which was called Ogham. At least I'm going to call it Ogham. They may have pronounced it slightly differently. So in the Druids' world they had 20 fundamental principles that were sort of sacred concepts that were all of life was made out of these elements, and each of these elements was represented by a letter. Also a symbolic code, which was basically a line with some lines off it, so 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, and also a tree. So there was 20 sacred trees, 20 letters, and these concepts are laid out in this diagram on the left. On the right-hand side, we have the healing herbs of the land. Now, these are added because in life sometimes we get poorly and we need to rebalance ourselves and and to heal our bodies from various ailments. Now, the Celts and the Druids obviously had the land much more familiar with the healing properties of nature. And so this is basically a repository of some of their information regarding how to heal yourself with various ailments. Just therefore you could actually replicate and heal yourself with this information. On the lower right-hand side we have Glastonbury Tor. Now the Celts believed that Glastonbury was the sacred heart and home of the goddess, the feminine side of their belief system. They had another location for the sacred masculine, but it's represented there because it's very much still a living tradition today. And if you ever go to Glastonbury, you'll find that the goddess traditions are still alive, and it does have a very different quality to the town and the land and the way that it feels there. So it's like a living place of pilgrimage for people who feel the Celtic spirit. Now, around the outside of this is actually an Arabic design, and I've included this as a sort of a nod to other cultures that I feel that have brought in similar understandings or have artistically represented these sort of spiritual values in an art form, and it's a sympathetic connection there. So it's very beautiful, and I feel that the same heart is behind the creation of the Arabic style. So I've just added it in there because it just felt right to do that. Well, the frame is basically an allegorical story regarding the beginning is unity at the top, and around the outside eventually it becomes two beasts, and the beasts are facing one another, which is, these beasts represent the duality in our day-to-day life. It starts off at the bottom with, which is the opposites, and in the left-hand side you have the males, and there's 4 men, and they've all got their heads facing each other, which implies that they're kind of at loggerheads, and is typical for men that they always kind of fight each other in any form whatsoever for part of their spirituality and their development. It's very natural for men to clash with each other, to learn about themselves and to find out who's best, and it's very intrinsic within their nature to do this. So on the right-hand side, we've got 3 women, and these women represent the mother, maiden, and crone energies. And for me, this represents the cooperative nature of the feminine, how they work together, because they're going around each other on this diagram. And this shows the sort of the fundamental principles at work, the male and the female, and how they're represented in our modern day, everyday life, and how they seem to have been represented throughout time, really. And as you go up the picture, you'll find that there's certain lower things are overcome. There's some like guardian birds halfway up, and once you transcend through the lower nature of opposites, then you reach the birds of friendship, which represents the marrying of the lower and the higher nature, and the unification eventually in the very center, which is represented by a symbol which is called Awen, or the light, and this is our true nature, which is to actually be unified. Okay, so the actual sword itself, right at the sword, the hilt and the arms of the sword, you'll see a knot, and it's very densely done, and there's actually a beginning and an end to the knot. And if you would like to increase your concentration, your powers of concentration, try with maybe your finger to start with, but if you're advanced, just using your eyes, to trace the line all the way through from the start to the end without breaking your concentration or losing your way. Now, you'll find that it's actually pretty tricky to do this, but over time, if you try it a few times, you'll eventually start to be able to keep your concentration and be able to get to the end. And you realize that what you're doing by doing this is that you're developing your ability to concentrate. Now, your ability to concentrate is so useful in this world and in life. And so it's really helping you to developing an inner quality that is going to be for your benefit.